I've sold over 200 businesses, and the one that's failed, they all made the same mistake within the first 48 hours, and that was telling the wrong person. Here's what most business owners don't realize is that the moment you start to sell your business, the minute that the word gets out, everything will change. Your key employees, they'll start interviewing for a new job just due to the fact that ownership has changed. Your competitors, they'll smell blood in the water and they'll try to start poaching your clients. And buyers, they lose interest because they assume if everybody knows that this thing's for sale, there must be something wrong. And the most dangerous part is this, that once it's out there, you can't undo it. My name is Joshua Lindsey, and I've been in mergers and acquisitions now for a little over 16 years. I've sold 6 of my own personal companies, and I've represented over 200 private companies, selling over $400 million in aggregate sales in small business. I've also watched deals fall apart because sellers, they didn't understand the importance of maintaining confidentiality. It's more than just signing an NDA and hoping for the best. It's a multi-layer system that even if you miss one layer, the entire thing can crumble. So let me walk you through the exact 5-layer process that I use in order to maintain confidentiality. This is the same system that I would use if I was selling my own business today. Point 1, why you need a third-party buffer. Look, your lawyer, he probably charges $500 an hour or more just to write and review contracts. But honestly, they don't vet buyers. They don't run interference, and they certainly don't have a pre-qualified buyer list of 5,000 buyers at their disposal. Here's why that matters. Most business owners, they think that they can handle this process all by themselves, and then eventually they'll just loop in their lawyer when it's time to draft the paperwork. Honestly, that's how leaks happen. A business broker or an M&A advisor, they act as a go-between or a buffer. Buyers, they never contact you directly. They never get your phone number. They never get your email. They're not supposed to show up at the office unannounced and just start touring around. And they don't have access to your business or your financials until they're pre-screened, sign the NDA, and they've been vetted financially that they have the funds to complete this transaction. Look, I've had buyers lie about their financials. I've had buyers who were actually competitors lying on these forms, just trying to get information about one of their competitor companies. If you're fielding those calls yourself, you won't know what you're dealing with until it's too late. Here's a very specific example. I represented a manufacturing business a few years back. A guy reached out. He said he was a private equity investor looking to buy the business in this exact space. He seemed legit. He had a nice pitch. But when I started digging, asking for proof of funds, references, going to his website to verify things, he got really defensive. It turns out he was actually working for the seller's largest competitor in the space. What he was really trying to do was get a first-hand look at the financials so that he could see what his competition was doing, their pricing structure, and even identify the current clients that they could potentially go after and take. If that seller had been representing himself, I guarantee you he would have made it through and been given that information, just due to the fact that the guy said the right things on the phone and had a nice pitch. He would have given that guy everything: bank statements, tax returns, customer list, whatever they want so that they can review the business and potentially make an offer. I caught it before anything was disclosed or anything could get out of hand. The other thing that people really miss is that your lawyer, he's gonna bill you $500 an hour, whether the deal closes or not. I work on contingency. I only get paid if and when the deal successfully closes. That alignment matters when it's someone's job to protect your confidentiality of this transaction for 6, 9, or even 12 months at a time. I'm not just drafting documents and sending invoices. I am actively managing every conversation, every interaction, every piece of information that actually goes out to buyers. Because if the deal doesn't close, I don't get paid. But hiring the right advisor, it's just the first layer. If you don't have the proper legal infrastructure in place before you talk to a buyer, none of this is going to work. Point 2, 2 legal documents that actually matter. An NDA without a non-solicitation clause is like locking the front door, but leaving your windows open. Here's what I mean by that. The first document that goes out is a comprehensive non-disclosure agreement, but it's not a one-page template that you download off of rocketlawyer.com. I'm talking about a non-disclosure agreement that actually has teeth. It needs to have language in there that prohibits buyers from contacting your employees, from contacting your customers, and contacting your vendors in any way possible. Really, it prevents them from contacting anyone that's connected to your business. And honestly, most generic non-disclosure agreements, they don't contain this. I had a seller who once had a buyer sign a very generic NDA. And the buyer, he went behind them and recruited their top salesperson to come and work for them. No legal recourse because the agreement, it didn't cover that. Salesperson left, revenue dropped by 30%, buyer walked. And the seller, he was stuck trying to rebuild his sales team in the aftermath. And what made it even worse is that the sale now became public and it spread like wildfire throughout the community. The second document that you need is what's called a letter of intent or an LOI. Once you've moved past the initial steps of inquiry and it becomes a little bit more serious, the LOI, it's going to reinforce confidentiality at the next level. What it really does is it formalizes what they can and can't do during due diligence. And here's the most important thing. These documents, they don't just protect you legally. What it really signals to a buyer is that you're serious and that there are consequences for breaking the trust. It really weeds out the amateurs really fast. Honestly, I've had buyers, they refuse to sign a non-disclosure agreement. They'll say, look, this is too restrictive. I'm a serious buyer, you should trust me. That's exactly when you should walk away. Look, if you're sitting here thinking, I don't even know where to start with this, that's exactly why I do what I do. I offer every business owner upfront a free business appraisal. No obligation, no upfront cost. Honestly, it's worth about $3,000 if you hired an actual business appraiser. I do it for free because I want you to know what your business is actually worth before we decide to even consider selling it. And if we end up working together, great. I work on contingency. I'll only get paid if we execute the exit. No retainers, no hourly fees, no monthly invoices. There's really no risk on your end. Links in the description if you want to talk. But whether you work with me or not, please don't try selling your business without a confidentiality plan in place. The stakes, they're just too high. All right, so now that you've got legal protection, let's talk about a third-party buffer. But really, none of that's really gonna matter if the first thing you do is go online and post your business on a marketplace with your name, heading, and full disclosure of your business. It's really where the blind marketing comes into play. All right, point 3, how to market your business without anyone knowing it's yours. I sold a $4 million manufacturing company last year. The owner's biggest competitor, he never even knew it was for sale until after the transaction closed. Here's how he did that. Blind marketing requires that you create a teaser profile that's done on the blind. It describes the business with general terms, industry, revenue range, cash flow, potential equipment that's included, but really no business name, no website, and no specific location disclosed. For example, instead of saying Joe's HVAC company that's listed in Provo, Utah, the listing would say something like established residential HVAC company for sale in Utah County generating $2.1 million in revenue. Buyers who are genuinely interested, they'll reach out. They'll sign the NDA and they'll only be able to access that information once they've been pre-qualified and they've been vetted. But here's where it gets really powerful. More than half of the transactions that I close don't even require me to go online and post blind ads. I've got a database of over 5,000 pre-qualified buyers. So I can send out a blind teaser to 500 buyers that kind of fit this criteria, and none of them even know whose business it is that's for sale. Let me give you a real example. I had a client who owned a chain of quick service fast food restaurants. His biggest fear was that his landlord would find out that he was selling. And if that happened, the landlord would try to renegotiate those leases. Or that his employees would find out, they would panic and they'd start leaving and looking for other jobs. So we never posted it publicly. I sent a blind teaser to my list, and within 48 hours, I had 12 qualified buyers reach out directly. All of them have already signed NDAs. All of them had already provided me with proof of funds. We narrowed it down to 3, and within 2 weeks, we had serious offers. The seller, he stayed completely anonymous until we negotiated terms, and it was time to sign the LOI. That business closed for $4.2 million. His landlord, they never found out that the business was actually for sale. His employees, they never found out until 2 weeks prior to closing when we announced it. And I don't even think his competitors even know who bought it or that it was sold, because everything's really remained the same. That's the entire point. The seller remains completely anonymous until it's safe to actually reveal the identity and disclose the sale. But even with blind marketing and legal agreements, you're gonna have to let some buyers into your business eventually. And that's honestly where a lot of sellers panic. So let me show you how we control that process. All right, point 4, the buyer vetting and information flow system. A tire kicker, okay? A tire kicker once wasted 6 weeks of my client's time before we even found out that he had any funds in the bank account. Here's how I make sure that never happens. The first thing that we do is we pre-qualify buyers. That means before they're gonna see any information about your business, we are gonna require to see some type of proof of funds. One of which, how much liquid capital do you have? Show me a bank statement. What's your experience in the industry? Why do you wanna buy a business like this? We're pre-qualifying. Honestly, you'd be shocked about how many people reach out about buying a $3 million company, and then they admit that they've got $50,000 in cash and they have no idea how they're gonna put the deal together. I really don't let those people anywhere near my clients. There's just not a whole lot we can do for them if they've only got $50,000 on a $3 million transaction. They're never gonna get approved for their loan, and they're gonna wanna go and shop this business around investor pools, and we just don't want that. Here's why this matters. Every hour that you spend talking to an unqualified buyer is an hour that you're exposed. It's an hour where information could actually leak. It's an hour where your focus is split between running your business and entertaining somebody who's honestly never gonna buy your business. Once a buyer is qualified and he's signed the non-disclosure, we move to what's called a CIM, a confidential information memorandum. This is a detailed document with financials, operations, customer breakdown, but still no business details or information. Every step is gated. You're not handing the keys over to the castle and hoping they don't drive off with it. Now here's what makes most sellers nervous. Eventually, you're gonna have to tell your employees. And if you do that wrong, honestly, it could blow up the deal. Point 5, the exact timing for telling your employees. A seller once told his manager 6 months early because he felt guilty keeping it a secret. The manager quit, took 3 employees with him. The deal fell apart. Now here's why the timing actually matters. In most scenarios, we're gonna tell the employees 1 to 2 weeks in advance to actually closing, not 3 months. Here's what most sellers don't understand. Your employees, they're not thinking about your retirement. They're thinking about their mortgage, their kids' college funds, and honestly, whether the new owner is gonna keep them around or not. If you tell them too early, those employees will probably start interviewing somewhere else. They get job offers, and even if they don't leave right away, their productivity will probably start to decline because they're mentally checked out. The anxiety and the nervousness around what's gonna happen to me will drive your best people to start looking elsewhere. For the most part, the right time to tell your employees is usually about 2 weeks prior to closing. At that point, everything's locked in legally, everything's signed, the new owner is committed, and you and the new owner can represent to the employees that you have a united front and a transition plan in place. Protecting confidentiality isn't deceptive, it's being responsible. You're not lying to them. You're protecting the business until the moment is right. So here's what we just covered. 1, hire a third party to be an intermediary or buffer for you during the sale. 2, lock down buyers with comprehensive non-disclosure agreements and LOIs during the process. 3, make sure that you market your business on the blind. No identifying details until buyers are actually vetted. 4, control the information that you release through a pre-qualification period. Secure data rooms and off-site meetings. Number 5, tell your employees exactly 2 weeks prior to closing for the formal announcement. This is the exact same system that I've used to sell 6 of my own personal companies. It works because it's built on 16 years of transaction history and processes. I've watched deals succeed and I've watched them fail on how well sellers actually protect themselves with the confidentiality. Now that you can understand how to protect yourself with confidentiality, you need to know how to deal with structure to protect yourself in the exit and what to negotiate up front to protect yourself. If you're serious about selling your business in the next 6 to 24 months, you will not want to miss this video. I'll see you there.